It's one of those mornings already. Hey.
So, Mark,
Yeah.
I have never earned my turns that way. It's always been take the lift up, and then if there's going to be any hiking, it's up further up the mountain from there.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm definitely fascinated with the running down the hill with a headlamp on. Um, yeah, I can't imagine if that thing died on you. And how many other people are out there with you where you're able to grab their?
Well, so during that race, there was quite a few people.
Ah,
But I think what you were asking, like, so when we skin up under a headlamp, then we ski down with a headlamp. And, that's depends on the conditions. I went in a storm last year and it was snowing so hard that it's like you almost skied right into the woods. Um, you had to be kind of careful about where you were going and watch your speed, but it's it's familiar terrain. I've been skiing there my whole life, so that helps a little bit. And you
which
just take
mountain?
your time. Pico,
Okay. Yep.
which is actually closed today because it's too cold.
Well, so I think like J Peak, and I hadn't heard about Stowe, but Sugarbush as well up in the north part of the state here. Um, they closed, but they listed cold first, and then they said wind. So it's
Yeah,
definitely supposed to be enough wind to disrupt the lifts today.
yeah.
But
Dude, it's
not
it's
happening here yet.
20 it's 20 degrees here and windy as all get out.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Jeff, it's -9 right this moment without the wind chill.
Actually,
And,
does
and
make me
and
feel a
it's
little
and it's
better.
getting colder.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to get to -18 before wind chill. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was to say, Mark, you're up in Vermont as well, right?
I am. Yep, a little bit south of Alex,
Very cool.
about an hour and a
Okay.
half south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in the other populated part of the state. Between us,
Mm.
there isn't that much.
Hmm.
All right. Well, 10 seconds where we're on camera and
Okay.
rolling in.
Roll
Three
in
seconds.
three.
Well, hello.
Peekaboo. Hello.
Hey guys.
Yeah, Jeff, you were out sick.
Mark, I'm so glad you joined us. What were you saying, Alex?
I was just saying
That's
you were
coming
out
down
sick
to the last
yesterday.
second.
Yeah.
Yes, I was. I was. I did not take a test, but I think it's whatever code's been going around. I think my son had it a week and a half ago, and actually a week ago, and I don't know because I haven't been around anybody in the past since last Saturday, Sunday. But I woke up Wednesday morning or Thursday morning not feeling too swift. I haven't had a fever over 101 in probably a decade or so.
Hmm.
So
Well,
that's my
my
story.
my wife's a first grade school teacher, which is just a classroom full of germs that she just stirs
Oh
around
yeah,
all day
for
long, and
sure.
there's all sorts
Yeah.
of stuff going on. So
Yep,
having a
I
couple of
hear you,
kids in primary school and a wife teaching
dude.
first grade,
It's
no shortage of
it's
things to tackle.
crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy how your kids go into school and just they you're right. It's they bring home the germs. It's like a bucket of germs just being turned and ready to come home and leash havoc on everybody else.
yeah, for sure.
It's all good. It's all good.
I haven't heard
So what else? Go ahead,
any
Alex.
sicknesses coming back from NADA this year. So that's so
Not
far
yet.
good on that front. Yeah. But
That helps. So Mark, what's your story? Give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so second generation dealer. Um, we started. My dad started this dealership in 1976. Moved to Rutland,
Mm-hmm.
Vermont, very small town. He came from Syracuse and a big dealership. It's been a high performing dealership for a long time. I took this particular store over. I was a general manager in 2000. Well, actually 1999. Um, and really, I would say going back the last 7 years or so, we've gotten quite progressive, and the timing seemed to be right for that because at the same time, customers were kind of changing their behavior. Core principles are all still in place, but where those principles occur, obviously, has shifted dramatically. And so, right place in the right time, and
Mm-hmm.
we found just a tremendous amount of success. But it's really evolved into a truly unique dealership, um, and which I'm just really, I may be the principal, but I'm still a part of it. So it's really a cultural thing here. So
And
So
your
you would say
dad's
that's
still in it too, right?
yeah, so my dad's 81 years old, and he works more hours than I do. He's a hardworking dude, and he's the general manager of our Toyota store. And you know what? You'd be hard pressed to find a more progressive 81-year-old guy. Who's been in the business for 62 years or something like that.
mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
he's
inspiring.
yeah, he's a tremendous role model and a great guy. And just not
Now, is
just
he
my dad,
watching
but
this as
my
you
best
spew
friend.
these
So
facts?
what's that? No, he's in Florida right now on vacation.
Okay.
So he called me. He called me yesterday morning at 5:45 to tell me
Mm-hmm.
that him and his wife were in Albany, my stepmom, and they had canceled his flights to Florida.
Mm.
So
Oh, wow.
it took me about 10 minutes. And the airline said they can't get him to Florida that day. And so about 10 minutes, I whipped him up a couple of tickets, Southwest Airlines to fly out from. He had to make a drive to Hartford, but we got him down to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Turned a short day into a long day, but he handled it well. So
I think
Very
that's
nice.
pretty standard travel out of the north in the winter.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
how
for
I got
sure.
Seems to be.
NADA, basically doing that same thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's tough flying nowadays. I mean, it's flying and traveling something I've always enjoyed and I still do, but it's fundamentally more expensive. And when things don't go right, it's a lot harder for them to get fixed. So you have to have some resilience for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it seems like everybody now has some sort of travel perk. So the upgrade list is way longer than it ever was. Like everyone
Yeah,
qualifies now.
yeah,
So yeah, but
yeah.
yeah. So we weren't here to talk about the air business. Get back to the car business. So Mark, you're
Now,
here
yeah, what?
because Steve Stauning recommended you for the first time in dealer refresh history. Steve Stauning said you guys need to have Mark Alderman on, and so here we are, and we go way back with
Yeah, he's.
Steve. I think
Yeah,
he
how do you know
Yeah.
Steve?
So Steve, I've seen Steve at probably. I think it was probably a good 6 or 7 years ago that I saw him at a 20 group, and he really impressed me. I took some notes. I followed through on those notes. Never connected with him afterwards. Didn't do any business with him. But those notes were a bit of a framework. At the time where I had met him, we were maybe even a below average performer in that particular space. And but that his discussion gave me a framework for what I wanted to establish, and it took a few years to make that happen. And then I saw him at another 20 group, and um, and then it was like I had come far enough along, so I was a relative high achiever at that point, and and I was a high achiever with how I was responding to customers and conversion rates and then how we handled the customer when they came in the dealership. But where I wanted his expertise was understanding um, digital advertising and in particular. And so I hired him as a consultant for that. And then we've been able to collaborate actually quite a bit beyond that. And, you know, um, from a from a dealership level, in engaging with a partner like that, I really feel like he's all about the outcome and achieving a desired outcome, and the money kind of takes care of itself. So props to Steve Stauning. He's been a tremendous asset for us.
I'm sure he's looking
You
for
can.
a download button so he can clip that, put it on a sales manager website.
Yeah. So think
So
highly of Steve. I think his lifestyle is probably a little too cushy, working from home in Coeur d'Alene. But other than that, he's a good, great guy, good asset.
Yeah, his the view from his back door, nothing to be desired.
puny little lake. Yeah, God, we could do such a much better job of busting on Steve. This is kind of weak, but
Yeah, he's one of those good guys. Even when you do get the opportunity, you sort of think back to all the nice things and all the positive things he's brought to the industry. Shout out, kudos to you, Mr. Steve. I didn't like. Yeah, we're gonna make this whole episode about Steve Stauning.
you're gonna start
Whole
holding
thing.
books.
Yes, the books, the receipts, everything. So, what are some of the? I guess, are you complete with the history and where you're at and where you've taken the dealership, and
Sure.
you know, if you want to touch on that a little bit more, go for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
Maybe.
it's a Chevrolet Buick GMC dealership. We're in Rutland, Vermont. We we don't have much in the way of population here. It's a small city, 16,000 people. There's probably 25,000 people in the county, and we're surrounded by mountains. And um, we um, and we're not next to a large, like the closest bigger city is Burlington, Vermont, which is a modest. I don't know what Burlington
It's
has, maybe
everyone's favorite spot.
When the
125,000
college
people.
kids are here, you can get up around 50,000.
Yeah. Um,
Really?
the whole state only has 500,000 people in it. Um, and but we sell about 1,100 vehicles a year um, in this small area. We have huge retention rates. Um, we're a tremendous leasing dealer and have been since the early 90s, number one leasing dealer in General Motors during all of that time as far as a percent of sales. Number one EV dealer in the state. Um,
Hmm.
You know that
and
that leasing number. That's quite the claim because a lot of the Vermonters are more apt to hold their cars longer than I think
mhm,
other places I've lived in the country. Um, I think the more of the call it the city folk are more
right,
apt to lease. People out in the rural areas, or especially farmers and whatnot, they're usually against it. They just kind of have a
right.
bad moniker with them. So
Yeah, when
interesting.
the way we get, when we started in the early 90s, Vermont didn't have hardly any leasing whatsoever. Um, the But on the national level, I had been to a meeting and Chevrolet was talking about what a tough year the following year was going to be because Ford had 500,000 leases coming due. That they expected to retain 80 to 90% of those leases, and Chevrolet only had 70,000 leases nationwide. And so actually, I had heard that at one meeting, and my father had heard it at another meeting. And at that point, we didn't have the Toyota dealership, and we were here operating the store together. And so we both thought at the same time, if Ford had done that to Chevrolet on a national level, could we do that to our competitors on a local level? And so then we just became a student of leasing and how to sell leasing. And there's actually he's passed away at this point, but Bob Tasca, not the third or the fourth, I think they have now, but um, Bob Tasca Sr., um, who was, he created the Ford red carpet lease. He had a Lincoln Mercury dealership in Seacock, Massachusetts. And I went down and mystery shopped him and met him and sat in his office and picked his brain. And so at that point, we started leasing more than 50% of our cars. And even though we've dipped below 50% a few times here and there, and GM had 18 months where they didn't offer leasing at all back in the financial crisis. For the most part, we've been well north of 50% since that period of time.
Wow.
That's strong.
Even through
I'm
the last year?
The last year we were about 38%.
Okay. But still,
okay.
That's a killer.
Yeah.
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 What do you what has brought about such success with your leasing? Like what are you doing that really sticks out, or is there one thing, two things, maybe, have you really dived into digital and online retailing, or what arrows are pointing towards that type of success?
Well, we're tremendous in digital retailing. That didn't really.
Okay.
The leasing success is more. We've actually changed. So let me say the way we started selling it was the old Ford half a car presentation.
Okay.
And we did that like with every single customer. And if the customer said they didn't want, let's say the customer was with the salesperson, they said, "Oh no, they don't want to know anything about leasing." I would go in and TO it and say, "Okay, well let me just show you about financing, how financing compares to lease." "Oh, okay." And then we go ahead and do the presentation and then give them the payments. And so then we had, a lease portfolio of near 2,000 people. And we've just done a really good job of taking care of those people. But we've changed the fascinating thing is this area of the country has one of the highest lease penetrations of any market anywhere. Because way back in those early days, oftentimes we sold the leasing concept, but we didn't sell the car. So, and even with high retention rates, sometimes when somebody would lease one or two cars in a row and then they'd go to a different brand, they would lease that car. So this area of the country has a super high lease penetration, and your friends and neighbors in Rutland, Vermont are just as likely to lease their car as they are to finance it, or maybe even more so.
Interesting.
So it's not, what we had to bridge the gap of early on was somebody being the only one leasing a car. So, and that took a lot of work. But once we got that flywheel kind of moving in that direction, it's been a little bit self-sustaining as long as you appreciate it. And, during COVID and during the last stretch and where there was a lot of equity in the leases, we had to do a little bit more work, and we're not quite as successful, frankly, in keeping people back into the lease because they had this equity, didn't know what to do with it. They were worried about putting it in a lease and not getting full value out of it. So
that makes sense.
If we let it
offering
be,
cash back during that time
so the way we handled it was because one of the benefits of leasing is not worrying about what your trade is worth. And so we would give them the value without really talking about the value. Um, so, um, you know, I don't know if there's a better way to have handled it, but the fact, if you start bringing it up about what the car is worth and the trade is worth, then that begs to differ of, is that all it's worth or could it be worth more? And so we would just do it. So
Mhm.
uh, we're big into, we think down payments pretty important. And so we're always pitching. You mentioned digital retailing. We do a lot of digital retailing. We're one price, but all of our payments start with a standard down payment of 15%. And so when we'd have a lease customer looking at another car, really that just is part of the 15%.
Uh-huh.
Mark,
Hmm.
do you ever convert any cash buyers to a one-pay lease?
On a personal
Mm.
level, I do. We've not had great success on the dealership level. What I recently changed was, it's not really a Foursquare, but it's like a Foursquare where customers are given options. And so with the digital retailing, and so that you know the scope of the digital retailing we do, um, we use a tool, Darwin, and there's my
Familiar with
Apple
that.
Watch,
Your new watch there going off.
my new watch. So we're completely one price and have been for many years. And so Darwin, whether you're online or in the showroom, it's the same exact experience. And you go through a questionnaire, and then it on the car you selected, and then it gives you options. So on our cash option, it now shows a lease option, um, so that you see that right away where it wasn't before. And so we programmed that to try and get a um, better, more people going from cash to lease, because the one pay lease, it's, it combines the benefits of paying cash and the convenience of paying cash and the saving of interest, but you retain some of these lease benefits, which are extraordinary.
Yeah, that's
What are some of those benefits?
Well, one of my favorite benefits, I'll just tell you a story. So in 2017, I got a brand new Acadia that I ordered special, Denali black, like, just dialed in exactly what I want. And it's amazing, for the
Mhm.
150 cars I've had in my life, I still get excited every single time I get one. And
That's
but
not good.
I had recently converted to leasing my own cars just prior to that 2017, and so I get it after waiting a couple of months for it. I had less than 300 miles on it, and I parked in a restaurant to pick up some to-go food, ran inside, come out, and there's people standing around my car, and I'm like, uh-oh. And the Domino's pizza guy had backed hard into the front corner of my brand new, at this time it was, 51,000, which I think it's the first vehicle I ever bought more than $50,000 or leased. And caved in the fender and the light and the bumper and all that. And that would have devastated me if I bought the car and owned the car. But it was
Oh
on a
yeah.
2-year lease, so I didn't care.
Yeah.
Fix it, drive it for another 23 months, get a new one. And so that'd give it a bad Carfax. So
Hmm.
that's just one benefit that a lot of people don't think about, is that value protection that you get from something that's
Yeah.
completely out of your control.
Yeah, no doubt. My my wife just bought out her lease, uh, which is I think it's the first time we actually bought out. Actually, second time we bought out a lease, but the first time was for different reasons. This time the reason was to keep it, and within a couple weeks of after buying out the lease, the car gets damaged.
Yeah.
It's like, no, why? Of course, of course.
right.
So you mentioned earlier, you mentioned digital retailing.
Yeah.
What are you using? Is there, what's a lot of dealerships are not finding, real success in that path. What makes you guys different? What programs are you using? I will assume that you've got a pretty tight process that goes from online into the showroom to make sure everything's congruent and in a good flow. Uh, where would you point where would you point some of those areas of success to?
I think one thing is making the leap to one price was
Okay.
that was a real process. It's way more than just a decision about we're going to be one price.
Yeah.
It literally took probably more than a year to really iron it out. Um, and one of my principles was is I wanted not just one price but consistent pricing, true consistent pricing. In other words, if two customers came in, looked at the same vehicle, had the same exact trade in, that they got the same terms and conditions, regardless of who the salesperson was, who the sales manager was, and regardless of who they were, whether they were buying their first car or 31st car, whether it was a man or a woman, whether they were nice or mean. Um, and so we really achieved that. It's much simpler on the new cars than the used cars. Used cars, we were really tested, um, where somebody says, "Oh, I love the car, but I just need a little bit better deal. I just need that, and that $400. That's all I need." But your
Hmm.
integrity is on the line at that, not just with the customer and potential customers, but with your staff. And and so we tried to establish all sorts of word tracks to try and handle that in a positive way, and uh, and really struggled with that. And then we created a very unique pricing system for our used cars that really broke through. And so on our used cars, um, we use vAuto to establish 100% price to market. That's where we start. But our used cars, we predetermine every single discount for the life of that vehicle.
Oh, interesting.
And it's all based on market day supply. Um, and so the hotter cars drop less and less frequently, and the harder to move cars drop a little bit faster, um, and are bigger chunks and more frequently. The other ones are less frequent. But if you like a car that we have, but you want a little bit better deal, all you have to do is wait until the next. Here's all the future pricing. Keep your fingers crossed. As long as it's here on these days at noon
Hmm.
on these dates, you can get it for any one of these prices. So you can buy it now for the today price, or you can buy it on February 5th for the February 5th price if it's still here, or February 10th for that price if it's still here. And that
Hmm.
has been awesome, um, because it gives all the power to the customer, right? And so we really locked in our pricing. We use third parties for appraising cars. We don't. Um, we nobody ever appraises a car here. We never go out, look at a car, and say that one's worth that much. So we use instant cash offer or Turn Automotive, um, and actually Black Book just came out with a provider. And sometimes we use ACV Live Appraisal, but we're essentially like an agent for the customer, and so we don't. There's no pricing determined on the sales consultant level or the sales manager level. And we change new vehicle pricing on a monthly basis, and then those are baked in for the month. And so pricing is all predetermined or
Hmm.
determined by third parties. And so it really positions us as an advocate for the customer.
I
Yeah.
really like
Yeah.
that spin of using the appraisal tools as the ones
Yeah.
to bring the bad news.
Right.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, because we feel like, um, people talk about this being the information age, and people have so much more information that they ever had. They may have more information; they don't have more knowledge than they've ever had. They, when my dad first started selling cars, there were only three brands of cars. You could get a Chevy, Ford, or a Dodge, and they only sold three cars. They had a big car, a really big car, and a ginormous car. And people traded every 2 to 3 years, and they traded with the same. They had 95% brand loyalty, and those people were really knowledgeable. They knew exactly how much the car should cost and how much their trade should be worth, because they'd been doing the same thing for many years prior. Um, and now, you Google what's the best family SUV, and you're going to get 2 million responses. So how do you, you know, I we believe that customers are looking for somebody that they can like, trust, and respect to kind of hold their hand through the process.
Like
So
this.
once we got the pricing really locked in and created a culture where everybody knows that's the price, it's not going to change. There's a believability, a credibility that people just sense, without with it's not about the words they're saying. They just know that that's it. And in an area like this, they know many people that have bought cars from us, so they all, it's the same story with everybody, and it's a lot of consistency. So that allowed us to, uh, be a little bit better about how we display our cars. If you go to our website, the
Mhm.
sole purpose of our website is to make it easy for you to find a car. So we have one of the simplest websites out there. There's no, there's very little in the way of like deals, lease payments, interest rate. There's no. It's just a selection tool.
Hmm.
So that's streamlined and simple, with the idea that if you're on a Alderman Chevrolet Buick GMC website, you're probably looking for a new Chevrolet, a new Buick, a new GMC, or a nice pre-owned car, and that's all that's on there. There's no meet the staff. There's no, it just anything that we can cut that stands in the way of that, we cut and we make it simple. So it's simple to
Hmm.
find a car, um, on our site.
Hmm.
And once you find a car, you can explore payments. And when you explore payments, you get into that Darwin tool, and it's all a very fast, uh, logical tool. But we use the same exact process in the store. So
Okay.
you can buy a car from home, or you can buy it in the showroom, and we'll hold out an iPad and we'll push all the buttons for you. But it's exactly the same process.
I'm hearing a theme from you, Mark.
I
Put it in one word:
was thinking the same.
consistency,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is something I think a lot of people in our industry lack. It's easy to chase the little widgets all over the place and the shiny little
sure.
thing all the time. It's hard to
Yeah,
have a baseline and stick to it and be ferocious in that consistency.
yeah, for sure.
What was the tweet that or maybe I'm sorry, it was probably a Facebook post that Steve Stauning had just hit up there.
Oh, he was
I'm
talking
curious
about
what other
staff
people.
pages are the most
Yeah,
out of date pages.
because your process is framing it quite differently because a lot of times people will say, well, your staff pages, some of those sub pages, if approached upon the right way, it becomes part of the why buy from us message, and everyone's talked for years why that's so important. You got to have that why buy, but you're saying, you removed that. I think what Steve had thrown up there was the fact that it's the least visited page on the dealership website. So that's two opposite ends of, yeah, their reputation. Is so
Yeah.
that's what you're saying about your dealership is the reputation is the why buy. No doubt, no doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Well,
But
there is
if you
one other
don't have
aspect
that
though.
if you don't have that reputation though, because maybe you're a newer dealership or you're under new management, you want to take your campaigns in a different direction. Um, it's not that I agree or disagree. I've gone back and forth with this
Sure.
exact thought process. Do we really need to make all the extra effort to make sure our about us page and our employee page makes any sense? How important is it really? So I
Well,
personally go back and forth. I may even lean more towards what you're saying is just make it easy to find the vehicle
right.
that the customer's looking for.
To that point, and a friend of mine really cut through the clutter on this for me one time. Um, he was a guy that had a strong BDC background, came in and worked with me for a while as a general sales manager, and so working together, the one takeaway I got from him was if everything's important, then nothing's important, and I was trying to do too much, and that was momentous for me, and so. Um, you know, I absolutely think that taking care of customers and being right by customers has a level of influence. But people think more in the short term and they're more self-centered than they ever have been ever. And so the reality is you might have sold somebody their last 6 or 7 cars, but if
Mhm.
they like a brand of like if something catches their eye and you don't sell it, that loyalty means less now than it ever has. So I'm not saying that there aren't people that I really want to get that that Subaru, right? But I bought my last 7 cars from Market Aldermans, and I would never buy a car. That does happen and that does influence some people, but overall, there's less of that loyalty than there ever has been, and there's probably going to be less in the future, just because people they see something they want and they try to get it. Sometimes it's like it's too hard and it's too complicated, and they time out on it. So um, that how you are with people has much more impact than anything that you're going to put on your website about testimonials or any of that. And so I
Mhm.
just try to make it really super easy. I figure if somebody wants a car that I'm selling, I want to be fundamentally easier than anybody else for them to find that car and then move the process forward. And so that's my most important thing that I'm trying to get.
You're hitting
Okay.
on a key component of loyalty. You know, there is an old saying. I'm trying to transition this over, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. But there is an old saying that you can't have loyal customers without loyal employees. And
Hmm.
one of the things that we've heard about you, Mark, is that you're pretty good with your staff.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you're
Well,
different with them? And
yeah. So it starts with who we have for staff more than anything. And we going back probably 6, 7 years ago, we had pretty average turnover, which is at a pretty unacceptable rate. Um, and so we did a deep dive on why people left, um, and ultimately came around to um, some of the people. We, ultimately that progressed into our hiring and retention process and trying to identify who were the right people to have on the bus. Um, and so we went through a process to try and determine a measure for having the right people on the bus. It was a really incredible process. We probably spent 3 days doing it, talking about extraordinary people talking about mediocre people and
Sounds like
deciding
you
what they
read Jim
stand for.
Collins somewhere in there too.
A good to great. Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's
Jim
talking about the
Collins' wife
bus.
is a Ironman world champion. So, and I'm big into the Ironman. So yeah, no, I loved his book. But uh, so we went through this process, and we ended up with what we consider to be our 51%. Um, and so I'll do a little test with you guys. If you guys got paper and pencil, I'll do a little test and see
Sure.
how this works out for you. So we identified 5 critical values. And so what I want you to think about is I want you to think about somebody extraordinary that you've worked with and somebody who was maybe less than extraordinary. We won't share any names or anything like that, but less than extraordinary. So the first core value, the acronym is SOLID, by the way, SOLID. And the first core value is S, is study it. We want people that are a student of their craft. People, and so score your 2 people on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being that they're really curious and they're a great student of their craft, and 1 if they're very poor at that. So, but we liked people that were naturally curious about how things could possibly be done better and how they could be better. That's the first core value. The O is own it. We want people to have an entrepreneurial mindset. We want people to think like business people. Like we want the person that sweeps the floors. We want them to think those are my floors, right? So don't drop something on my floors. You take care of my floors. But like salespeople, now not the last couple of years, but over the last couple of decades, salespeople net more on a car sale than a dealer does, right? Because all the expenses come out of us. So I want them to think about that. That's their cars on the front line. I want them to own those cars. So we want an entrepreneurial mindset. So score your top person and your mediocre person on that entrepreneurial mindset or own it. The L is love it. We want people that just enjoy work. This was probably my biggest aha moment was that I learned several years ago that people's joy of work is hardwired and cannot be changed. There was a fascinating study about identical twins separated near birth, and then they did a study on all these people to identify what was hardwired into their DNA and what was a result of nurture versus nature type thing. And they found that their joy of work was absolutely identical regardless of what they did for work, that it's in their DNA. So if you've ever had somebody who like doesn't enjoy their job, it has nothing to do with the job. It has everything to do with them. And if they hated their last job and you hire them, they're going to hate your job as soon as the honeymoon's over. So the L is love it. So write them on love it. So the I is integrity. It's a little bit different than honesty in the sense that, if they're dishonest, we're not going to hire them, period. Integrity is more about personal integrity. Do they have the ability to make a promise to themselves and follow through on it, right? Do they do what they say they're going to do? And so we value integrity of people that can make a commitment and follow through on it. So score your 2 people on integrity. And then the final one is depend on me. We found that the vast 80% of our call-ins, unexpected absences, all occurred by a very small number of people. So if you think about if somebody's going to call in this coming Monday and you can guess within 2 or 3 people which one that's going to be, that's a problem. So we identified that as a core value and made a point that we were not going to retain people that couldn't be depended upon, and we were not going to hire people unless there was evidence that we would be able to depend on them. So let me ask you guys. So how did your top person score on solid?
So this person is actually a business partner of mine. He got a 48 from me
Okay. So
out of
48
50.
out of 50. That's pretty
Out of
damn
50.
good.
Yeah. Yep.
How did your mediocre
Yeah.
person score, Alex?
I was a 23, and it was somebody I have fired.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff, how'd yours come out?
uh, a 38,
That's your top
but I
person. How'd your
missed the
mediocre person score?
uh, 23.
Yeah. Yeah. So it
But
worked for your two.
I actually want to go. I'm going to go back and uh, do this again for myself as well. Find two more other people. Um, I don't think I initially grabbed the people that maybe I should have.
Yeah, this is
So I'm
this
definitely.
is really
Is
cool, Mark.
this is this Yeah, is this online somewhere? Is this something that I think you mentioned that, right?
No, well, it's not online anywhere. It's a tool that we use. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we have 10 core concepts, 10 aspects of the business
Mm-hmm.
that we think are critical, and this is one of the 10. So every 10 weeks, we come around to work on our core values. When we hire people,
Wow.
we have an interview that we've designed to help us identify how people do on the core values. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I just did an interview last night. I said, what is the most common reason that you've called in sick to work for, right? So, a good answer that I get is, geez, I can't remember the last time I called in sick to work. Not so great answer is, I sometimes whatever, I have some digestive issues and things like that. So every once in a while I
Mm-hmm.
have to call in and I can't make it into work. And that's not to say they're not nice people and they're not capable, but we have a very interdependent uh, business here. And when somebody doesn't show up to work, uh, it there goes my watch again. When they don't show up to work, they make it tougher for the person to the left of them and the person to the right of them. They make it tougher on the customer, and it's also a lousy way to spend your time off, laying on the couch not feeling good. So,
Mm-hmm. Uh, Jordan Peterson, if you're familiar, he's got a personality test, and I keep swearing to myself that I'm going to go through this. I think there's a small fee associated with it, but it breaks down. I think it's one, two, three, four, five different personality types. And of course, he expands once you go through the test. He really expands upon the answers, and what you turn out to be, whatever trait is your most bearing trait. I'm
right.
curious. I wonder if this is sort of familiar. Whenever you started talking about it, it sort of popped in my head. I'm like, I wonder if that's close to the Jordan Peterson test, which shame on me for never going through it. But yeah, this is interesting. This is great advice. I like this a lot.
Yeah. So the other thing
It's
you talked about our employees. You were talking about
Go ahead.
our kind of employee strategy and where our successes come. The first is having the right people, because when you have the right look, it's kind of like asking a jockey how he's won all those races, and a lot of it comes down to the horse. Um, so but the other aspect that we do that's extremely unique, and any dealer can do it anywhere, easy, it absolutely costs zero, and it absolutely makes a huge impact, is I pay people fast. I pay people faster than anybody. And so what's that mean? Um, we manage the dealership based on the week. That's kind of another thing. We've created this weekly performance system. Um, but we pay every week, and our performance week goes from a Wednesday to a Tuesday. So what's that mean, and what's it look like? Take a finance manager, right? So a finance manager is there, most of them are 100% commission or near 100% commission. And what's the worst week of the month for every finance manager in the country, or almost every, right? The first week of the month. They just got finished closing a month, and so now they're tired. There's no sense of urgency, and it's the first week of the month on a consistent basis. The second and third week of the month tend to be better, and then the last week of the month is all helter skelter, wild, crazy, and you're trying to hold on to your numbers. And then you're not even going to get paid for 2 more weeks, right? And so,
Mhm.
a friend of mine used to be a dog trainer, and he said, in training dogs, you have to remember that you have to correct their behavior within 3 seconds, or they have no idea why you're giving them this feedback. And then somebody else said, well, salespeople, it has to be faster, right? So, but all jokes aside, 2 weeks removed from the end of the month. So now you're paying based on performance that occurred 3 to 7 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Here's how it works in my store. Anybody on a performance pay plan, the performance week ends on a Wednesday and they're paid in full every dime I owe them on Friday. So if you just had your best week that you ever had from a performance perspective, you're going to get your biggest paycheck that you ever got. And if you just had a lousy week, you're going to get a lousy paycheck. And that is a self correcting mechanism that doesn't need any influence from me. It's all in the design. And what does it cost? It costs zero, nothing. So anybody could do that anywhere. And the first thing that happens when I talk to dealers about that is they go to their office manager and say, hey, I want to pay every week. The office manager says, I can't. Well, that's not who
You
you want
can.
deciding how you're running your business in that sense.
Hmm.
Office managers not in tune to how to maximize human performance.
That's true.
Mm-mm.
And it's not necessarily easy, but it can be simple. I can tell you, even though I pay on this every single week, and there's no monthly bonuses, it's all weekly bonuses. We process payroll because of the simplicity of our pay plans. And by using technology a little bit, we process payroll in less than 1 hour every single week. So
Hmm.
it can be done. And,
That's
and any dealer can do that anywhere.
They can make it real easy. Just put everyone in
that's
salary.
unheard of.
No,
Yeah.
that
Well,
that is
here's a
brilliant,
case in
by the
point.
way.
Like our salespeople are paid on a volume-based pay plan, right? So, in other words, um, um, so it's all based on how many units you sell, but it's a fixed matrix. So, if you sell 4 units, deliver 4 units this week, you get paid the same no matter what those 4 units were. Doesn't matter what the gross
Mhm.
was; it's all one price. Um, the and so it's simple. It takes a sales consultant 5 minutes to fill out their pay sheet about what they earned that week. A manager signs off on it, and that gets turned into accounting. So
Yep, that is easy.
How long did it? Yeah, that's how long did it take to transition over to that?
uh, it wasn't long. First talk to the salespeople. When we switched to volume based, we talked to salespeople and about what we wanted to achieve. And the primary objective was this. Prior to being volume based, you would have, let's say, a lot of new car deals, right, were very skinny deals. Minimum commission
Mhm.
back then was $50. And but then you'd have every once in a while a salesperson would make $800 commission. What do you think they made the $800 commission on? A new car or used car?
Yeah, used car.
Probably a used car.
A used car, right? It was a used car that you just happened to take in cheap. You put it out, you priced it, because the same guy that took it in priced it. The market thought, holy crap, that's a good deal. And then somebody just called up and said, hey, is this such and such vehicle available? Oh, yes, it is. Oh, I'd like to buy that. And they sell it just like that. And so they, goes the watch. And so did they really earn $800? Meanwhile, that person that made 50 on the new car, they worked their ass off to get that deal,
Yeah,
competing
maybe
against
under
a bunch of
allowed on
other
the
dealers,
trade. And
right? And so there was a real disconnect between the value of the work and the value of the pay. And it turns into this thing of like, it's almost like lottery tickets. You know, it's all fun when all of a sudden you, holy crap, I made $800 on that. That's great. You know, but then you have to grind through two or three people that you're making 50 on. And I just wanted to make it so it was, so you knew what you had to do to make whatever you wanted. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you deliver 4 cars, you make $1,600. If you want to make $800 on a car here, every time you deliver your 5th car, you're going to make $800 because your pay for 4 cars is $1,600 for the week, and your pay for the 5th car delivered is $2,400. So you can anticipate it, you can plan towards it, and you can work towards it, and it doesn't matter what car you sell. And so when I pitched this, I just said we're going to run both pay plans concurrently for a period of 3 months. And if you would have made more on the old pay plan, I'll make up the difference. And nobody would have made more on the old pay plan. And they really appreciated not having to try, like, they don't have any pressure to try and steer a customer towards any kind of particular car because they get paid exactly the
Mm-hmm.
same regardless of what car the customer gets. So it's very
And with it
congruent
being
for
one,
them.
yeah, and with it being one price, it just makes it that much more easier.
Right.
I know.
you know, if a dealer was sitting back saying, how do I calculate some of this out? I would say, like, I would think this is how I would approach it. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'd look at all the car deals we did last year and say what was the average commission, and then
Yeah.
build the plan from there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what we did, is looked at what, the rate of pay wasn't an issue globally, right? So when you looked at it on big picture, the rate of pay was fine, but it was the disconnect between the value of the work that they were doing and what they were getting paid didn't always match up. Lots of times people were doing more valuable work and getting paid less, and other times they just happened to be lucky. So, and we wanted to promote high quality work as and compensate for that as opposed to compensating for being lucky. So,
Well,
Hmm.
Mark, I am astonished and surprised by some of the innovations you made in operations. It's not often we come across somebody who's taking these kind of risks and is obviously seeing benefit.
Yeah, because they are risks. You're
sure.
you're changing a process that's been ingrained into this industry for decades.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
no
I'm
easy task
I'm
for sure.
fortunate. I'm fortunate in that respect. My dad started the dealership in '76, and he spent his first 10 years trying to make sure that he didn't default, didn't go broke. So, um, and I've just been fortunate to come into a situation where I've had the freedom to be able to focus on how the business is done, not just that, what do we have to do to survive. Um, so I'm very blessed in that respect. So,
Well, good for you, man. This is I don't
somebody
know
asked
where to
about
start.
Car Bravo.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wonder if we had
Yeah,
time to
that
get
was
into
one of the
that.
questions. Yeah.
Loving and very excited about Car Bravo. Um, I'm a bit biased here, but um, I'm a huge fan of auto dealers. Um, Auto dealers are, whether it's the dealers themselves or the people that work at dealerships, they are a resilient, quality bunch of people. The vast majority of people that I've met and known in this business. And so in the industry, you've got some, some direct to consumer disruptors out there. And they've made a few waves, but in my mind, it's all temporary and they're about ready to get it handed to them. And they've already started. You look at Carvana and look at their stock value and what's happened to that. You look at, Tesla, the same thing. But, and so, Car Bravo is well, let me back up. So I've talked about the disruptors. They absolutely do some valuable things, but we can copy and learn from them a lot faster and easier than they can copy and learn from us. All right. Because there's 25,000 automobile dealerships in the country stocked full of people to help people buy cars and to take care of people servicing their cars. And they don't have that, and they're not going to be able to have that anytime soon. And as we go along, that's going to make a huge difference. And so Carvana or Car Bravo is an opportunity. It's just a platform to steal what Carvana and Vroom are doing on a level, and then leverage that dealer network. Leverage having a local dealer that is within 10 miles for 90% of the country. And I think it's going to be awesome, and I'm super excited and proud. I'm pilot dealer number 9, and
Okay.
so we've had some good initial success, but I've really enjoyed working with the leadership team. I've given them a laundry list of things that I want to see happen, and they're super responsive to it. So we're trying to build something that's going to be scalable across the dealer network. And I think it's going to be tremendous. So any dealer on the fence about it, I absolutely think they should get in line, raise their hand, and look forward to it. But a lot of the things, having a one price experience, having digital retailing, having transparent processes, even like having a money back guarantee. I've had a 5-day money back guarantee for, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
How many times you paid it out?
I pay it out probably 4 or 5 times a year.
Okay.
Every once in a while I get 2 in a week, and everybody thinks the sky is falling, but I have no interest in making somebody keep a car that they don't want. I I can't believe it was as hard of a decision to start it as I thought it was going to be. I'm absolutely thrilled with it, and it does change the way your people interact, like immediately. When you say, "Look,
Really?
you can't just you can't play word games and kind of trick somebody into something, and then you're gonna make them keep it." You just say from the dealer level, "Look, you've got to be well prepared, do your homework ahead of time, help these people find the perfect car, and you got to do it in a way that they're going to be happy with it long term. Because if they come back in 3 or 4 days and they want their money back, I'm giving them their money back." So,
Yeah.
um,
It gives
and
them the initiative. Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering the Car Bravo question for Ryan Everson. I know he appreciates that.
yeah,
Mark, we've got to have you back on soon. I think an hour is way too quick for all the information and data you can supply.
yeah,
Yeah,
enjoy.
I'd like to see Jeff feeling a lot better too. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm fighting a pretty bad cold.
yeah, thank you for making
Jeff,
it.
don't you think Alex should make the
See,
trip down
Jeff
from
showed up. He was sick.
Jeff? Don't you think Alex should make the trip down and we do like do a broadcast, an episode from the dealership here?
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah.
How's your Wi-Fi?
Our Wi-Fi is good. I think it's good.
I'll drive down. We'll
Yep.
do that.
Yeah, it's a little easier for you. No doubt. Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah,
I'm
but
still
I've really
fighting.
enjoyed it. So.
No,
Well,
we
we
really
picked the right
appreciate it.
day to get you. So when you got negative temperatures in Vermont, the floor
I
up's
wasn't going to do
not
anything
really
outside.
flying in. Yeah. But thank you to Steve Stauning for introducing you to us, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yep.
You're ferociously consistent. It's something we should all take to heart. And like Jeff
And
said, we got to have you back on. So we'll be in touch to do that.
Sure. Yeah, anytime.
All right. Well,
all
thank you,
right, man.
everybody.
Everyone have a good weekend.
Stay
Yeah,
warm.
thank you.
I'm gonna go pop some meds.
Yeah.
There you go.